ask some questions, but really, I want it to be more conversational. You know, so if you want to just talk off the top,
I don't have a problem with talking, man. Talk your ears off and everything. You know that.
Definitely. So yeah, I guess my first thing would just be like, tell me a little bit about you and what you do, career-wise, or just in your life.
All right, I'm a bit of a jack of all trades.
Okay.
My grandfather told me when I was a child, because understand that my grandparents came out of the Jim Crow South, where black men couldn't choose a professional career. They had to learn how to do a lot of things. Sometimes they were short order cooks, sometimes they were mechanics. And because of that, my grandfather told me, learn how to do many things, you'll never be broke, but only do things you really love to do.
Okay.
And so growing up, I realized I loved being in the kitchen, culinary arts, and I loved writing, and I loved being around creative people. So everything I do has some kind of creative outlet or creative expression to it. The other love I have with respect to what I do is politics.
Okay.
I'm always about trying to make some kind of change because I don't think anything's ever been perfect, and we certainly aren't living through perfect times. And I'm always about how do we maximize a culture of society for most people, as opposed to what we see going on right now is minimizing it for most people, maximizing it for very few. So culinary arts, writing, creative projects, politics, that's my bailiwick.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're a pretty long-term floater. When did you first start floating? How did you first hear about floating?
I first started floating many years ago. It had to be 25 years ago, 30 years ago. I got into it because I made a bet with a friend of mine when I was a teenager about who was going to be the first person to be in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Okay.
And whoever won that bet had to determine the feat for the other. So he ended up winning because he broke the record for running the Empire State Building in a record time. And because he did his first, he told me that I had to do mine. And what he said I had to do was break the world's record for sit-ups.
Okay.
And look at the size I am. The guy who set the world record for sit-ups at the time was like 5'5", weighed 140 pounds. You know, I'm close to 220 pounds. Anyway, I trained for it and I tried, and I was doing it for United Negro College Fund as a fundraiser.
What year was that?
This was in 1987, man, 87,
Okay.
88. It was a long time ago. And because I was still without this, and and I did exactly 11,000 sit-ups in 7 hours and 58 minutes.
Was it nonstop?
It was continuous. You had 2 bathroom breaks that you could do, but other than that, it was. And I ended up herniating 3 discs, and tearing 5 muscles, and everything else. And so my back problems began at a very early age. I was still in my 20s, at a very early age, and therapy wasn't what it was now. My problem wasn't one that could be remedied by surgery. Either not remedy or that was a very dramatic step.
Okay.
And so I was looking for any kind of relaxative therapy I could find. And that's how I found floating. I initially started because I was trying to go for pain alleviation and found that it worked.
Okay.
Which is one of the reasons why I continue to do it. It's just one. I didn't do it for other reasons, but that was the reason why I started.
So had you found anything else that helped? Just floating helped?
Floating helps more than any other thing. The floating keeps me from taking muscle relaxers.
Okay.
The floating keeps me from doping up to kill pain.
Okay.
I do that in inversion, gravity inversion. Because if I can get the decompression in my body, inversion going upside down, if I can get that decompression, then I can stave off the inflammation, and I can stave off the sciatic, and I can stave off the disc pain. But the floating is as close as I can get to a 0G environment.
Okay.
And if I could live in a 0G environment, I would. But since I can't, I come in here and I get the float done. And as long as I can do it once a week, and I can sustain myself through the week by just doing my stretching, workout, and inversion. If I can get in here for that once a week, it helps me out.
Okay.
It gets me over the hump.
So what brought you to floating was primarily physical. Now, do you meditate or anything?
Yeah, I do. And the pod is like the perfect environment for that. Because to me, meditation is enhanced more by reducing as many sensory interferences as you can possibly get to. And when I'm in there, there's no light, there's no sound, it's just me and the water. I can begin to it reminds me of something. When I was younger, I had a cousin who taught me how to write.
Okay.
And he got me started by saying that at the end of each day, before I go to bed, sit down and write for 15 minutes. And I said, why? He said, because there's a lot of crazy that comes into your head every day. And if you don't write the crazy out of your head, you never find the sanity to get to where you want to go in life. And so he called it taking a crazy 15. Well, I can come here and take a crazy 60. Or I can come here and take a crazy 90. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
Because my earliest introduction to meditation was actually writing before I went to more traditional methods. But now I come in here and I can go through that same sorting process and clear my mind. Yeah.
That's amazing. So, how would you say that floating integrates into the rest of your life? You said you come in weekly, but have you seen, beyond the physical stuff, have you seen any sort of improvements?
Yeah, I would put it to you this way. We talk about well-being, and we talk about two types of well-being most: mental well-being and physical well-being. In that you can say mental well-being and physical well-being means that there are two beings to you.
Yeah.
But see, there are really five. There's a mental, there's a spiritual, there's a psychological, there's an emotional, physical. All of those are beings of you. And each one of them has a health that needs to maintain. There's an emotional health we need to maintain, a psychological health we need to maintain, spiritual health, so on and so on. And to me, well-being is how cohesive and comprehensive can the health status of each one of your beings be.
Okay.
And it's only then, when they're all at a certain health level, that you have what you call integration.
Okay.
And so that's what I'm always going for, is how can I get all of my beings to do that? Now, float allows me to work on them all at the same time.
Awesome.
Because it's a physical, I have to get in that water and float.
Yeah.
But the others are all silent internal, metaphysical.
Yeah.
And so while I'm in there doing the physical, it leads me to the others. And so in that 1 hour, in that hour and a half, I can integrate all of that. In that 1 hour, I can comprehensively be who I am and who I want to be in that time that I'm in there.
That's awesome.
That transfers into every aspect of my life, my relationships with other people, my relationships with my children, my relationships with my wife. It transfers into my ability to tap into my creative resources quicker instead of having to wait a long time to get to them. Because when I go in there, I mean, all kinds of stuff. My mind's moving at light speed sometimes. I got to get it to slow down. But there's a point in time whenever I'm in when it seems like I just enter into this part of my brain where ideas just start spitting out all over the place. Whether it's a new recipe of this, or it's a new idea to write for somebody's speech, or an article for HuffPost, or whatever it is just starts coming out. And so that part of it I find transfers directly into what I do when I get out of there, what I do for the rest of my life. But I would recommend that everybody, to me, houses should be made with float tanks.
Like with the kitchen.
Yeah. Houses are made with bathtubs, but they should actually be made with float tanks. Because I remember when my children were born, and I said to my wife, I may never be able to give my child a palace. I may never be able to give my child a mansion or a penthouse in New York City. But your body is the first home they will ever have.
Yeah.
And so I will do whatever it is I can to help you make your body the best home for our child, right? The child lives in utero in a sac filled with water. So to me, floating is going back to the womb. And the umbilical connection I'm looking to is to my own psyche. So when I go in there, I'm going back into the womb, I'm looking to reconnect with myself.
Yeah.
Just like the child was connected to the mother, your psyche becomes your mother and father when you leave the womb.
Yeah.
And many of us are disconnected from our psyches. We need to be reconnected. So when I go back into the womb, that's what I do. I'm connecting back to my psychic spiritual placenta so that I can get hooked up to me again. So that's one of the reasons why I do it too.
Man, that is amazing. That was very well put.
Tell it to everybody. That's why it should be in there. Everybody should have one of these things.
Yeah.
They really do. Everybody's got showers and bathtubs. They should have float tanks too. Believe me, the world would be a better place if more people were floating.
I agree. So on that note, what would you say to anyone who's considering floating and maybe hesitant about it? Or just first-time floaters, people just starting their practice. Anything
Right.
that you would tell them?
Yeah, I would say to them, try to imagine being able to go to a space and time reserved for you, where you have no concerns about anyone else. You have no concerns about anything that you have to do. There's nothing pressing on you. And you are in an environment that 70% of your body is made out of. If you can just allow yourself to entertain that, you can be convinced by that. Otherwise, it's just, your psyche is too distorted to pick up on it. That's what I have to say. I am always welcoming to any environment where most of my body is made up of.
Yeah.
If you were to completely dehydrate a human body, it could fit into a shoebox. Okay? So when somebody says water, okay. I'm with it, okay? And that's saying something coming from a black man, because we don't like swimming, right?
No. My mom doesn't know how to swim. Yeah.
No, but see, I know about the safety of salt. So you put 600 pounds of salt in water, I'm there, all right?
Man, that was great. I have one more question, actually.
Yeah.
I feel that there's a pretty marked difference between a person's first flow, their fourth flow, and their 90th flow. So, have you seen any differences between when you first started to now?
Oh, yeah. Because the first flow that anybody has is acclimation.
Yeah.
They have to allow themselves to get adjusted to sensory deprivation and absence of depth perception.
And the novelty of the tank,
right?
Strangeness of it.
Because we feel our greatest security when we see.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to overcome acclimation. To me, in that first flow, is overcoming the insecurity of the environment. And once you overcome that insecurity, every time you go in there, the access to the psychic aspect of it that I was talking about earlier, you get to it quicker.
Okay.
So instead of having a flow for an hour and only being in that access margin for 10 minutes, you can have a flow for an hour and be in that access margin for 55 minutes, because you get there quicker. The quicker you get to it, the longer time you stay there, the more you're in that beta wavelength, it gets better and better every time. Yeah.
So how many times have you floated?
Here, God, it must be, wow, I would say 50, 60 times already.
But then you said you've been doing this
Oh,
for
but I've been doing,
years?
so if you were to go back through the years,
Yeah.
well over 1,000.
Wow. And so, have you done other tanks? Like, I know you prefer the pod. Is that your favorite one?
Yeah.
But have you done any other ones? Samadhi, anything like
I've done Samadhi tank. I'm a little too big for it.
Okay.
Because when I'm in there, part of me, the sensory deprivation is not touching anything.
Yeah.
And my shoulders are always, and so when I'm in that pod, I prefer the darkness of the Samadhi tank. I mean, that's like 2 midnights in a jug, you know what I'm saying? That thing is super dark. That I really like that. I wish that could be replicated in the pod.
Yeah.
But absent that, it's the space that I really need to be in, and so the pod works for me. And so other tanks that I've done have been pod-like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried room 3?
I tried room 3.
Yeah.
It's too much space for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the enclosure because I don't know anybody, not even elephants, got a womb that big. So again, I'm looking for the womb experience, right? So the pod, more space
Close
to
to
me.
that, okay.
Yeah, my son has tried both tanks, prefers a Samadhi tank.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's not as big as I am.
Gotcha.
So
Does your wife float?
she floats.
She
Yeah,
floats?
she's done it a couple of times.
Okay.
I'm trying to get in here to do more.
Yeah.
Because I think that when both people are floating, there's a really happy household going on.
It's a lot of introspection going on.
A lot of introspection. I'm glad you said that word, because that's the one thing that is most absent in our society and culture right now.
Yeah.
We're all extrospecting. We're not looking inward about anything. And because of that, we don't operate with any kind of critical thinking processes whatsoever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I appreciate you sitting down for this conversation. You and I have great conversations all the time, but I very much feel like Float 60 is something of a cultural nexus, where we can make that normal and make that okay to introspect and take time for yourself.
Yeah.
And be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to do, is just establish a community.
That's a good point. Be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to that point, I would bring up this one definition, because being a writer, I'm always trying to get people to understand the words they use.
Yeah.
And when you're not introspecting, what you're not doing is learning how to trust yourself. Because introspection brings you closer to the knowledge of your inner voice, okay? And I define trust as a condition of confidence that your vulnerabilities will not be exploited. And so many of us,
Say that again?
a condition of confidence that your vulnerabilities will not be exploited.
Okay.
Many of us out here make bad judgments about our life because we are exploiting our own vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Whereas if we were more aware of them, we could either comfort them or we could overcome them. But because we're not introspecting, we're not hearing the wisdom of our own
Yeah.
inner voice. So this allows me to stay in tune to that. You feel me?
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right.
Thank you. That's everything.
Cool, man.
Yeah.